regular. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's crazy to hear because I wouldn't even think that you had a stage fright. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I was formulating things in my head before we went on stage, and I remember one time he was like, "Yo, you a genius." I don't know what it was. He was like, "You a genius." And it's just like sometimes I just get caught in my thoughts. So, you know, and as T said, I was one of the greatest performers he's ever seen.
Yeah, nah, definitely one of the greatest, and that's why even still to this day, and I say that like, you know, because a lot of people like we did shows before, we did tours, so you know there's a difference between a person who could do it regardless and the person who's kind of like relying on their celebrity in order to carry the show. You know what I'm saying? And so you didn't need that. Like you could just, it doesn't matter like who's out there, what stage they put you on, you was gonna execute. So yeah. Now I always say that.
Yeah,
you know what
it was developed because you kind of just threw me in the lion's den, and and that's where I really found myself, you know, on that stage. And I remember it was funny because, you know, I remember we went to Asbury Park and we performed for a white couple, literally 2 people, right? And you was like, no matter what the show is, we're gonna do it. But then that night we performed for over 1,000 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you were showing me like the impossible things, like when we performed for 30,000 people in Baltimore.
Yeah.
At the arena.
Yeah. And they cut that. And we was doing stuff before the internet was going crazy over the politics. We was doing stuff where we said vote Obama and they cut our mics. Boom, cut. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know, we been was doing that, and it's so crazy to me to see it now, because if we recorded some of that stuff, it would just be like wow, y'all did that, or that happened. Like, yeah, that really happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All of that stuff was just like, if internet existed, had it existed today, even the Obama moment, it would have been huge. But you always just kind of just taught me, like, no matter what, if this is the plan, we execute. And whether 2 people show up or 1,000 people show up, if it rains, Boston, for example. Remember we went all the way to Boston and it rained. Everybody got soaked. Shoes was wet. Yeah. But we still went and we still networked, because I think we went and had dinner with some people that night.
I think we did. We went to New Hampshire, came back down to Boston, and it rained. That was a good show too. It was like they had like it was like a summer car show thing. Yeah. And a car caught fire in the distance. I remember that. Worcester, yeah. Which is funny because now I Drew manages Joyner Lucas, who's from Worcester. Right. So it's like crazy because I've never heard of this place, and now a lot of Drew's success comes from Worcester, where we had went to do the show and did all that.
And that was one of the most emotionally impactful shows we ever did. The crowd wasn't that big. I think maybe 50 people max. And it rained, and we just took off our shirts and was just performing.
And we brought the whole front row on stage. Yeah. And we was dancing with them.
Mad love. And it was all white crowd, and we performing hip hop. You would expected that wouldn't have happened, but they showed us mad love.
Yeah, in real life, it's all like I said before, in real life it's never what you would think. Like, that's why I don't get too deep into what's going on the internet when everybody hate each other, and this white person, this black person, this Spanish person, they all beefing online. But in real life, it's not really like that. You know what I mean?
Let's switch gears. Let's talk the difference between us and our parents' generation. You know, not specifically our parents per se, but our generation versus our parents, who we just on the balcony talking outside about how everybody they think buying a house is an accomplishment. Right. And they think that graduating from college is an accomplishment, and this is the way. Yeah. Right? And taking $40K and giving it to a bank where you could have took $40K and, like, what'd you say?
Yeah, like I would rather go start a business than buy a house. So if I would rather do a lot of things than to buy a house, honestly. I mean, but and I don't want to knock the house thing. I just think, like, we talking about opportunity costs at that point. Right. So it's like, what can you do? You got $40,000 for a down payment on a house, but what can you do with that 40 that's gonna grow it even more than the house? And the other thing, like Grant Cardone, the dude, the YouTube guy, and he said, and he always says, like, the house is still a liability because it's not like I'm talking about a single family home, not where you got like three duplexes. 3 families in there, and so like you're basically living free because the other 2 are paying the mortgage. We're talking about a house for yourself. A single family house is a liability. Right. When someone breaks, you gotta still fix it. and then you took your 40K that you could have took and put into a business. You could have started. My mom's like, I remember she was trying to start a business, and that was about the cost that she needed to start the business that she ended up starting, that got her to be able to quit her job and things like that and run her own business. So it's just like, I feel like if you do have 40K, 30K, start something that's going to bring you consistent income rather than throw it in a house. You've got this house that's everything's breaking, but you're just so happy about it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, cash is king. And I think it's all about cash flow, right? Like creating something that creates cash flow. The house isn't the single family house isn't going to create cash flow. But it's a great point you said, like even as far as it being a liability, forget breaking. You have to maintain this house.
They maintain, yeah, right.
You know, like the shingles or the siding is going to have weather. It's going to get weathered, and you're going to have to take somebody to come out power wash. You have to paint the house, the
maintenance,
roofing, the maintenance, all of that stuff. You know, you're going to have to upgrade this house. Technology gets better, so the old air conditioning unit you got in the back, gonna have to be replaced.
Right.
Like this thing is definitely a liability. So when people say, "Oh, you know, we bought a house," I'm like, "You bought a liability."
Right. But even equity. So people talk about equity all the time. Well, you know, you get equity in the home, but like, let's talk about what equity really is, right? Okay. Equity is a loan. It's a loan. So basically, it's an easy way to get a loan. But it's just like, so your house, you bought it for $300. Now it's worth $350. You got $50,000 equity in the home that you can grab. But what is equity? It's $50,000 loan that you still owe the bank that you have to pay back, and now they refinance your mortgage so that instead of $300, now you owe $350. So you're still paying back. So people talk like, I feel like a lot of people talk like equity is like some type of free money that you just get to just have $100,000 out of nowhere. But no, it's a loan. It's still interest rate on it. And I just feel like a lot of people talk about equity, but they don't really talk about what it actually is. You know what I'm saying?
I think before you put money on the house, you need to go and take a look at that amortization table, right? Take the best interest rate you can buy, put 30-year, you know, in there, and look at the amortization table and see how much, you know, you took the loan out for,
right?
And how much you paid back.
Right.
Usually
exactly.
It's like you get a $400,000 house, and after 30 years. You're paying $900,000 back.
Right. And I looked at something the other day, and it was basically saying it was comparing renting for the same amount of years, like as a mortgage, and then who actually made more money or who actually made the better decision based on the finance. And it wasn't as far off as you would think. You know what I mean? And of course, it's a crazy variable because the person who was renting took that down payment money and put it in the stock market, right? Just like I was telling you earlier, if you have a house, let's say you put 10% down on a house that costs $400,000, and that's $40,000. If you would, let's say like you would have bought the house in like the year 2001, 2002, and you would have put it in Apple stock, and I think at that time Apple stock was probably like $18 a share or something like that. I could be way off, but I've done this math already. But if you would have put your now that $400,000 house, let's say it's a decent neighborhood, it increases in price to $600K. You know what I mean? So now over that, we're in the year 2020 now. Over that 20-year time, you've made $200,000 when you try to sell that house back. But if you would have put that 40K into the stock market, it would have turned into $10 million by now.
You made $10,000 a year.
Yeah, well,
that's what that is. 200,000.
200,000
over 20 years.
Right.
$10,000.
So it's not a. So now it's just like you took that money and didn't put it into something that actually grows the most. And people don't. I feel like they're not thinking that money is supposed to actually grow for you and do other things for you. So sometimes it's not the smartest move to buy something. I mean, sometimes if it's going to take that money away from something else you could have did with it, like start a business into the stock market and do things like that, then it's just, I
mean, you figure if you're going to make $10,000 a year off this house that was a liability that you were paying into along the way, you really didn't make that $200,000, but let's say, that's what you think you made. But you took that same down payment.
Because you also been doing maintenance the whole time that you're not going to get back.
Taxes.
Taxes.
All of that.
Fees. You already know the realtor fees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.